Hey everyone, and welcome back. So today's video is going to be a controversial one. However, before you take out your pitchforks, I do want to mention that personally, I am a huge Metroid fan, and in some ways, I would love to be playing Metroid Prime 4 right now. I mean, at the end of my last reaction video to the Nintendo Direct, I even mentioned how its absence sort of disappointed me yet again. It's something that a lot of people have been asking for. Of course, I would have loved to hear about Metroid Prime 4. However, when I took a slight step back and I turned off my gamer brain and I started thinking with more my business-oriented brain, its absence from the Direct actually started to make more sense and actually pointed to maybe something really good for the series. So for the next couple of minutes for this video, I'm going to ask a huge favor, and I know it's a big one. But I'm gonna ask you to do the same thing and not think from the perspective of a gamer who just can't wait to play this game, but rather think in the mindset of a gamer that wants this series to succeed in the best way possible. So as we jump in, of course, I want to invite you to comment in the comments down below. All I ask, however, is that you keep it civil. And in some crazy way, if you actually wind up liking this video, why don't you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Now, there are a couple of reasons I want to go over today why I think it's a good thing that Metroid Prime 4 did not release in 2023, but I want to start with what is probably the most obvious reason. And that is because of how packed 2023 already is with big game releases. First of all, you don't want a game like this releasing in January and February because those are dead months for gaming and the game most likely would have just died. Then we got the Mario movie in March, and you know what? That pumped the attention to the Mario franchise. Once again, you don't want a different game going against that. And in May, I think you all know what came next. Of course, we got Tears of the Kingdom, one of the most anticipated games from the Switch. Any other Nintendo game releasing within the month before to the 2 months after would have just been lost in its vortex. I mean, look at the proof. Even though it was a decent game, who's talking about Pikmin 4? And obviously, with the Mario movie being such a success in the beginning of the year, the brand recognition has never been higher for Mario. It was guaranteed that Nintendo was going to release a brand new Mario game, along with a remake of Mario RPG. Oh, and also the sequel to the Detective Pikachu series? And that's not even getting into any of the big third-party games that will be releasing in the holiday season of 2023. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all this is that as a Metroid fan, you should not only want to play the next game, but you should want the series to be a success so that we eventually get a Metroid Prime 5, and we ensure that we get brand new, fresh Metroid games for years to come. Now, to reach that mass appeal, the game has to be bought not only by the gamers themselves, but parents wanting to offer a gift to their children, friends buying games for other friends. And if you walk into a store and you've got a brand new Zelda game, 2 brand new Mario games, a Pokemon branded game, and this Metroid game, if you aren't heavily invested in the gaming industry and you don't know much about these franchises, which one are you going with? If we back up for a moment, Metroid Dread was one of the most successful Metroid games of all time, and you know why? Because it was the highlight of that holiday season, and it wasn't really going up against any other major Nintendo franchises. So ultimately, although I know that Metroid has the chops to go against a Mario game, the average consumer doesn't. So now for the next part of the video, although normally I don't really do this much on the channel because I don't like depending on rumors, let's go down the rabbit hole that the Nintendo Switch successor is releasing next year, because it is extremely likely that it is releasing. What the specs are going to be or what the system is exactly going to do is not the point of today, but just let's assume that it is coming out next year. Now, since we are going down that rabbit hole for 2 seconds, let's just flesh it out really quickly. In my opinion, there are 2 launch windows for the console. Now, the risky launch for Nintendo would be announcing it in January or February and then trying to aim right away for a quick launch either mid-March to mid-April. Basically, they would sacrifice the 2 weakest months of the year to begin with. However, they would start their 2024 fiscal year extremely strong. However, the more likely launch window from a financial perspective will be an announcement in mid-March to mid-April. That way, you finish the fiscal year strong and you make investors happy with letting them know that something new is coming. And that would most likely leave us with a launch of the console late summer, like end August, to probably beginning September. But that's enough about the Switch 2 successor. Let's flip back to Metroid. But the reason I'm going into this is because it is directly related to where I think the release of Metroid Prime 4 is going. Now, in my opinion, Metroid Prime 4 just might be lining up to be a launch title for the Nintendo Switch successor, or at least a very early launch on the system. And the reason why is because if you want to showcase the power of a newer system, you need a Nintendo property with somewhat more realistic graphics to it. I mean, a new Mario game or Donkey Kong game, of course, is going to look better on the new Switch, but the problem is with cartoony graphics is it doesn't always showcase the power of a console. And let's just say they throw in something like ray tracing or DLSS, well, you know what? Samus's armor is almost made for those type of effects. Now, if it does end up being that launch title on the Nintendo Switch, I still hope it's a multi-generational title, meaning that we have a working version for the earlier Switch models. However, this is directly why I think that this is a win that Metroid Prime 4 didn't release in 2023. I mean, what could you ask for more as the fan of a franchise to have your game being the showcase piece for a brand new generation of console? Not only that, but historically, launch titles, no matter what series they come from, do much better than the average title simply because at launch, there aren't that many games available, meaning pretty much everyone picking up the new console also picks up the game. Meaning if it is set up for a launch title, you are giving the best chance of success for Metroid Prime 4 to hit high sales numbers. And you know what? As I said earlier, almost guarantee that we'll get a Metroid Prime 5 eventually. And you know what? Let's say it's not a launch title, but it does just release on the new system. Don't we always say that we want a game to release in a fully functional and ready state, and that we want the best version available of a game? Well, we already saw with the latest big Nintendo titles, like I love Tears of the Kingdom. I don't want to throw any shade at that game, but anyone who's played it can admit that at certain moments, there are slowdowns in the frame rate. What that means is that the Nintendo Switch is pretty much pushing as hard as it can. Even the remaster of Metroid Prime, in my opinion, is pretty much pushing the console as far as it can go. So if we want a better looking, better performing Metroid Prime 4, it might be an unfortunate reality that we have to accept that it has to be on the next generation console. And personally, rather than play a diminished version of a Metroid Prime 4 that has to release only for the Nintendo Switch, I'd rather just wait a little longer and play an absolute killer version of the game on the next generation console. And ultimately, that is why I think it's an absolute win for the Metroid franchise that it didn't release in 2023. Because we're setting it up for the best chance of success. We're setting it up to be possibly a launch title and have better success than it would normally have. And lastly, we're setting up the game to be the best version of Metroid Prime 4 that we could play. Now, I want to hear from all of you. You might disagree with this, but let me know what your thoughts are. And like I said earlier, just try and keep it civil. And you have to admit it, even if you disagree, part of all this has to make a little bit of sense. Anyway, as I said earlier, if you did end up somehow enjoying the video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and click on that notification bell so you know when all my future videos come out. And as usual, I hope I'll see you in my next video.